Have you ever wondered why Indonesia doesn't just make its own iPhones? I mean, developed countries can do it, so why does a big country like Indonesia still import them from China? Or on the flip side, why doesn't a tech giant like the United States grow all its own rice? They have the best technology, but they still import tons of it from Asia. The answer isn't because Indonesia is bad at tech or that America is lazy at farming. The real answer is one of the most powerful, yet simple, concepts in all of economics: comparative advantage. Stick with me, because understanding this will change how you see the world. Let's start with a simple idea called absolute advantage. Imagine two workers, Hendra and Bombong. They can both harvest rice and make baskets. In a day, Hendra can either get 50 kilograms of rice or make 10 baskets. Bombong, on the other hand, can get 30 kilograms of rice or make 6 baskets. Clearly, Hendra is faster at both jobs. He's more productive in rice and more productive in making baskets. We say Hendra has an absolute advantage. Now, here's the big question: who should do what? Common sense might tell you that since Hendra is better at everything, he should just do both. But wait, that's actually not the most efficient way to do things. If Hendra tries to do everything himself, let's say he splits his time. Maybe he spends some hours on rice and some on baskets. He'll get a decent amount of both, sure. But is this the best possible outcome for everyone? The answer is a surprising no. This is where the real magic happens. The secret sauce is something called opportunity cost. This is the key to understanding everything. Opportunity cost is simply what you give up to do something else. Let's make our example a bit clearer to see this in action. Let's say Hendra can produce 100 kilograms of rice or 50 baskets a day, and Bombong can produce 40 kilograms of rice or 10 baskets a day. Hendra still has the absolute advantage in both, but let's look at the opportunity cost. For Hendra to produce 1 kilogram of rice, he gives up the chance to make half a basket. For Bombong to produce 1 kilogram of rice, he only gives up a quarter of a basket. See that? Bombong has a lower opportunity cost for producing rice. He gives up less to get it. Now let's look at baskets. For Hendra to make 1 basket, he gives up 2 kilograms of rice. For Bombong to make 1 basket, he has to give up 4 kilograms of rice. Here, Hendra has the lower opportunity cost for making baskets. So even though Hendra is better at both tasks, Bombong has a comparative advantage in producing rice, and Hendra has a comparative advantage in making baskets. This means they should specialize. So what happens if they specialize and trade? Let's see. Bombong puts all his time into rice, producing 40 kilograms. Hendra puts all his time into baskets, making 50. The total output is 40 kilos of rice and 50 baskets. Now, compare this to a world where they don't trade and each do half and half. In that scenario, Hendra would produce 50 kilos of rice and 25 baskets, while Bombong would produce 20 kilos of rice and 5 baskets. The total would be 70 kilos of rice and only 30 baskets. Wait, with trade, rice production went down, but basket production went way up. How does that make everyone better off? This is where the trade part comes in. They can negotiate a deal. Let us say Bombong trades 15 kilos of his rice to Hendra in exchange for 20 of Hendra's baskets. After the trade, Hendra ends up with 15 kilos of rice and 30 baskets. Bombong ends up with 25 kilos of rice and 20 baskets. If you look back at what they could produce on their own, both of them now have more rice and more baskets than they could have possibly made by themselves. They are both richer. This is the magic of trade. The total pie gets bigger, and it can be divided so that everyone gets a bigger slice. Let's think about a real-world example. Serena Williams, the tennis legend. She can probably mow her own lawn much faster than a gardener. She has an absolute advantage, but should she? An hour of her time on the tennis court is worth millions. An hour mowing the lawn saves her maybe $50. The opportunity cost for her to mow the lawn is massive. It makes far more sense for her to pay a gardener who has a much lower opportunity cost and spend her time on the court. The gardener has the comparative advantage in mowing the lawn, even if Serena is faster. This exact logic applies to entire countries. Let's take Indonesia and South Korea. South Korea is a tech powerhouse. They can produce a lot of semiconductors. Indonesia has vast, fertile land, perfect for growing rice. Let's say, hypothetically, South Korea is also pretty good at growing rice, maybe even better than Indonesia in terms of pure efficiency because of their technology. But what is the opportunity cost for South Korea to use its resources, its skilled engineers, its high-tech factories to grow rice? It gives up the chance to make extremely valuable semiconductors. For Indonesia, the opportunity cost of growing rice is much lower. The land is there, and the climate is perfect. So, Indonesia has a comparative advantage in rice. South Korea has a comparative advantage in semiconductors. The logical trade pattern is clear. Indonesia should specialize in agriculture and export things like rice, coffee, and palm oil. South Korea should specialize in technology and export things like semiconductors and cars. They trade with each other, and both nations become more prosperous than if they tried to be completely self-sufficient. This is exactly what we see in the real world. Now, you might be thinking, but wait, isn't trade bad? What about job losses? That's a valid concern. When Indonesia imports cheaper textiles from Vietnam, some local textile factories might struggle and workers might lose their jobs. This is a real and painful short-term cost. However, the story doesn't end there. While jobs in that specific industry might decline, jobs in the industries where Indonesia has a comparative advantage like agriculture or natural resource processing will grow. The economy as a whole becomes more productive, creating new opportunities. The key is for governments to help workers through this transition with things like retraining programs. Another argument is about protecting infant industries. Should a country protect a new industry, like car manufacturing, until it's strong enough to compete globally? It sounds reasonable, but there's a danger. Often, this temporary protection becomes permanent. The protected industry never has to face real competition, so it never becomes truly efficient, and consumers end up paying higher prices for lower quality goods. So, what does this mean for Indonesia today? Indonesia has a massive comparative advantage in agriculture and labor-intensive goods. Smart policy would be to double down on these strengths. Focus on modernizing agriculture, building up food processing industries, and becoming a global powerhouse in that space. This means allowing cheaper imports of machinery and technology that make these industries more competitive. It doesn't mean Indonesia can't have a tech sector, but trying to be the best at everything at once often leads to being mediocre at everything. In the end, comparative advantage is a simple but profound idea. You don't have to be the absolute best at something to benefit from specializing in it. You just have to be relatively better at it than other things you could be doing. For individuals and for countries, focusing on your comparative advantage and then trading with others is the surest path to greater prosperity for everyone. It's why our world is so interconnected and why, ultimately, everyone wins from trade. Thanks for watching. If you found this interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.